Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Richard, also known as The Awakening with Dawn, and this is the Wake Up to Real Love podcast, where we share stories of struggles and triumphs in love, sex, and relationships, along with expert advice to create more conscious connections. I am super honored today to introduce my guest, Kia Baker. She is the creator and host of the Female Veterans Podcast, co-host of Hot Topics Live, and a success coach at the London Real Academy. Welcome, Kia.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited because we met during our podcast program and we had a couple conversations, not related to the program. And I just really admire you for who you are, just for who you are, and for what you're doing in the world, and just the energy and spirit that you bring. You're a very beautiful and powerful woman. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you be with me today.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm so deeply honored.
Yeah. So I know this is kind of crazy time, and you have a really unusual situation that you're experiencing right now. People are stuck inside with their loved ones, and or people are isolated, from their loved ones. I mean, you get both extremes. And so I just wanted to find out how you're dealing with your circumstance, and you can, just tell us what's going on for you.
Well, it's been about 5 weeks since I've really been anywhere. I am a disabled veteran, although my illness is invisible. And so what this means is that my immune system is compromised. So I'm someone who should not come in contact with coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
That, and also my littlest baby, my child, he's 4, and he also has a compromised immune system. So we have to be super cautious.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I am not isolated alone. I have my 2 children with me and been going through the process of a divorce for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all together though.
Yeah, because I think when I met, he had moved out, right? And now he's back?
Kind of, not exactly. What we did was we decided that we actually negotiated. So he was going to move out. And then we decided that, or rather I decided that I wanted to try something that I had recently discovered called conscious uncoupling. Mm-hmm. And it is, I believe the creator is Catherine Woodward. She did a TED Talk, and you can find it on YouTube, but it's basically about lovingly separating from a marriage with kindness and compassion, and being conscious of how that the end of this relationship affects your future relationships. Mm-hmm. And also for the benefit of my children, mm-hmm. to be able to slowly detach from the family unit rather than a sudden detachment. Mm-hmm. And so that they could process it better, especially my baby, which is what I really wanted, because he's really close to his dad. Mm-hmm. So the older one, it's a little different. So
how old is your older one again?
He will be 14 in about a week and a half.
Okay.
So this is what we decided. And my ex-husband wanted a little more time to get prepared to buy his own home. Mm-hmm. So that's how I negotiated. I said, well, you can stay here and save money and get prepared. But this is what I want. And he agreed to give it a shot.
So how has this transition been for you over the last 2 years? Well, 2 things. How has it been for you, and compared to how your relationship was when you were, a couple, like, wanting to stay married?
Right. So actually, there has been a few changes, but it's not really that different. It is, so obviously we don't sleep in the same room. We had a guest room. Since I asked for the divorce, I moved out of the bedroom.
Uh-huh.
And I moved downstairs into our guest room, so we don't interact in that way. And other than that, he works a lot, so we don't. Well, he worked a lot before, and so we didn't see much of each other. And so it was just me and the kids. And prior to me, my encore career, which I'm having now, I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't something, a long-term thing that the marriage slowly fell apart. It wasn't problems that I was aware of or wanted to see that made the relationship come apart. It was sudden. It felt at the time, of course I know a lot more now, but it felt at the time like one day I was very happy and in love and we had a family, and then one day happened and the next day my marriage was over.
Mm.
So it's kind of akin to, like, this is not what happened, but it's akin to walking in on your husband cheating and you're just not the kind of woman that will want to work it out.
Uh-huh.
That's like your boundary. And
Uh-huh.
once you see that, the marriage is over. It was kind of like that, but I won't go into a lot of details for the sake of him.
Yeah.
But it was a horrible. We'll just say that alcohol was involved, and it was like a horrible public humiliation that actually gave me PTSD, and
Wow.
I couldn't recover from it.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids were involved, and it was just like a really bad scene.
Uh-huh.
And it was just not something that I was willing to ever go through again. And I couldn't be sure that I would never have to go through it again. In fact, I am actually quite sure that I would go through it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent 5 days in bed after it happened going, what am I going to do?
Mm.
Actually, that's not true. I would say it was about 3 days. The first day, I cried all day.
Mm-hmm.
The second day, I laid in bed and interval crying and going, FML, what just happened to my life?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of was like in shock. The third day, I was able to talk to a friend who she had just lost a loved one. So I pulled myself together and called her,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked a bit, and that sort of helped me. And after I hung up with her, I was laying there and I realized that I needed help, because I felt like I was at the bottom of a ditch looking up. So I knew that I had hit rock bottom for my life and I needed help. And
it's interesting because your friend, dealing with the death of a loved one, I mean,
mm-hmm.
the death of a marriage is a huge
mm-hmm.
grief. It's very,
mm-hmm.
very similar.
Yes. And I actually turned on YouTube, and I had one of those cable voice controllers, and I said, motivation. That's what I put in. And up came a bunch of motivation, and I just clicked on Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory, and he happened to have this guy, Jordan Harbinger, from the Jordan Harbinger Show, who ironically has a podcast, right? So
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how that all happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched his episode, and he had to start his business over after 10 years and all of this stuff. And it resonated in a way, because I was like, wow, I have to start my life over after 13 years.
Yeah.
And if he can rebuild his business, I can rebuild my life. And that's literally how it was like, that was my wake up moment. And then I said, okay, let me watch another one of these episodes. And the next one was Joe Dispenza.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I love him. What is shifting my paradigm? Please tell me. Mm-hmm. And as I listened to him speak, I knew that my whole life was going to change. I knew that I had the power to change it because I was already familiar with the law of attraction.
Uh-huh.
But this was like more in depth, and it was more the explanation of the quantum physics side than I had learned from reading Ernest Holmes' The Science of the Mind.
Uh-huh.
And so it resonated to me in a different way.
Uh-huh.
And because I like physics, so I just knew that I had all the power to change my life and to come back to life from feeling so broken at the end of this sudden end of my marriage was within me. And that I just had to rediscover love and trust for myself.
Mm.
And once I did those things, that I could do anything.
Mm-hmm. So how did you rediscover that love and trust for yourself? Because I think this is really where people struggle, when they're in these partnerships that are not helping you feel like your best self.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really contributing to your growth, either individually or your growth as a couple together. And you feel stuck, and you sort of question your judgment, or you question, what the hell happened, or, what's going on, or what can I do? And I think that a lot of people have this sort of self-doubt, like because to take a leap of faith and to do something that's drastically different is really scary, because you don't, it's uncertain.
Super scary.
It's uncertain, just like what's happening now is really uncertain, right? So how do you manage how do you manage the external uncertainty, and develop this sense of internal certainty?
Well, for this time period, I have adopted a saying that I saw on Instagram, and someone I followed posted a picture of someone meditating, and it was captioned, "If you can't go outside, go inside."
Mm.
And so for this COVID time period, I've gone hard on both external work and internal work on multiple levels, and it has kept me somewhat sane. This week, felt the cabin fever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, that's it. I'm going somewhere. And I'm like,
where are you going? Where are you going, Kia?
I'll tell you where I'm going. I am on Sunday, and because I'm just too busy until then, but on Sunday, after I'm done working, I am going to get my kids in the car, and we're going to drive 30 minutes to this beautiful overlook in Washington, where I live. It's on a scenic highway,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the Columbia River Gorge, and it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It's called Cape Horn. And it's just stunning. And I like to just drive there sometimes and park my car and just look at it and think and meditate and all of that. I mean, it's kind of hard to meditate because when cars go by, it's really loud because it's on the side of a mountain, but it's so beautiful that it feels really like a special place, and it's a special place for me. So I said, no one will be there. And even if they are, they'll be 6 feet from me because of just the way it's kind of set up. No one parks like bumper to bumper. It's not big enough. It wouldn't be safe. And it's an amazing view. And I'm going to take my kids for a drive. And then on the way back, I'm going to take them through a drive-through. We're going to get some food. And that's it, because my baby, he's really, really affected by this. I can see the change in him. He's becoming more shy,
more withdrawn.
Like, more withdrawn. And I'm like, I've got to do something. So, and I mean, he was in preschool and he loved school, and now he's at home every day and I'm teaching him, and he doesn't see any other kids his age, and he's, and I also work a lot. So he's with his brother, or, he's kind of lonely for children his own age. We used to have lots of play dates and things like that. So, I mean, I see the impact on my teenagers, like, please let me go outside. I'll wear a mask. And finally I'm like, you know what? Go outside with a mask on, and here's the rules for when you come in. You've got to take your clothes off immediately. You've got to put them in the wash. You've got to go straight to a shower and wash your hair. And that's it, and these are our precautions. But we can't live like this anymore. So this week I made up my mind. I was like, well, I won't go in a crowded store. I won't go places. Their father has a super immune system, and so does my oldest son. So they go to the store. So it's kind of worked out. And so I'm not doing without anything, but they have been handling it, and we put precautions in place, and all you can do right now. And finding things to keep yourself busy and entertained and all of those things. And I feel like self-work, inner healing, all of those things give me a lot of, being on a healing journey has given me a lot more peace during this time period.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit ago about, how most people live their lives so busy and distracted, by all of the obligations and responsibilities that you have. And this is forced looking within. I mean, some people will still choose not to do it. Some people will binge watch, which is fine. Binge watching has its place. But this is also a perfect opportunity to really examine what's working in your life, what you find really meaningful and valuable, the things that you want to hang on to when all of this stuff changes and we can, integrate back into the new normal. But this is a really beautiful opportunity to learn how to be and to recognize what's meaningful and valuable, what's important. Who am I really? I'm not all of the things that I do, but who am I? How do I deal with my sense of grief and loss over, eventually your ex will move out. Eventually, you will be with the kids and however you work out custody and whatever. But it's like, what kind of life do you really want to create for yourself?
Well, you know what? We are all sort of at a defining moment. Like you said, I believe, and I know this to be true, that it is a collective trauma that we're all experiencing. And I believe we're all going to need to know how to cope with a bit of PTSD after this is done. And it is such a clear moment in all of our lives to decide what we want to create going forward, whether it's creating a new normal at this time or whether it's creating a new normal when this time is over, because we're not going back. I mean, put a pin in it. Those days are gone.
What do you think is going to change when we go back?
It's hard to say.
Which is really going forward, because you can never really go back, right?
Right, absolutely. And I don't think we could ever go back to the way that time of history is gone. We've all made history by virtue of being alive at this moment. And I think that the world will change in a lot of unexpected ways. Like, okay, so I'm a huge history fan. And so as soon as this happened, I started rereading stuff about the Spanish flu immediately. And because it is the most recent pandemic we've had in the modern age prior to this one, 100 years ago. And so I look at that and I go, okay, they did not go into lockdown, which is, they're doing the same thing we did. We have no new science to help us do anything different than 100 years ago. But isolate and go into lockdown. The government denied it a bit longer than they did this time. So more people got sick, more people died. People were in their homes. They didn't have the virtual technology that we have to connect. So they were truly isolated. And after it was done, it took about 15 months to recover, to get to some sort of new normal. And then the 1920s happened. And we know that, I mean, that's all I have to go on. So I'm going to take the outlook that we got about 9 to 10 years of a lot of fun. And like,
so take advantage of it, people.
Take advantage. Like, get ready to start partying.
Let's dance.
It's going to be a 10-year party as soon as we can gather again. And I believe that. I believe that the time, if and when the time comes, that we can go to concerts and ball games and all of these things. Don't you think everyone's going to celebrate? I think we're going to not stop celebrating and having big parties and big get-togethers because we can.
Well, I think it's
so
it's like finding joy, in whatever you have, or creating these experiences. But I feel like it's more conscious, because now we're recognizing all the things that we took for granted, like just going for a walk, sitting out in the sun and just feeling, the warmth and the energy, and, walking down the street and going to a restaurant and, having a nice meal, and going to the grocery store and having everything that we want at our disposal, and all of these things that we really took for granted, that now it's like, oh, maybe we'll have this newfound sense of appreciation for everything.
Hugging your friends.
Yeah. I miss that.
Right? I'm a hugger. I am
Me too.
So hug starved.
Deprived.
I mean, I hug my kids extra, but just my girlfriends. I had a Zoom date with my girlfriend and we drank wine together, and it was like so fun, but I wished that I could hug her. Right.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing. So I'm super grateful for this technology, but when they say social distancing and all of that, I just miss I don't miss the connection, but I miss the contact.
Mm-hmm.
With my friends.
I miss the physicality because, unlike you, my teenagers are old. I got 16, 19, and 21, and they're not big huggers. They're like, yeah, go away, mom, stay away.
Oh no.
So I'm like, I actually did tell my 19-year-old, I was like, remember when you used to sit on my lap and cuddle? He's like, oh yeah, those days are long gone, mom.
I tell that to my 14-year-old. I totally know. I get really nostalgic lately too. I'm like, do you remember I used to sing you songs, and I used to watch all your favorite cartoons with you when we would color? And he's like, not really. Like, great. Why did I do all that for? You weren't going to remember it. I could have just been the worst mother ever. You wouldn't remember.
Okay. Well, maybe they won't remember the action, but they'll remember the feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it was worth it.
Which is
at least I'll remember the feeling.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
You'll remember that feeling. And so this is the thing, like having this really deep appreciation for the connections that you do have, the ways that you experience love, and the things that you experience in your life that bring you joy. I heard you say that you just took up painting again. Like, tell me about that. What's happening with that? Because I think this is all part of creating this new normal, like things that you really want to enjoy your life.
Well, so we have I don't have that much time, but because I'm still working from home. And what happened was, so a lot of people got displaced from their work, and then they got their kids home, so they had to homeschool. But I was already homeschooling and I was already working from home. So my life didn't change that much, except for being able to come and go and see my friends and my free time activities. But so how I ended up taking up painting was I started studying. I started doing inner work, and I decided that as a child abuse survivor, I grew up in a dysfunctional home with 2 guardians that were mentally ill. And I decided to start healing my mother wound. And I decided to start healing my inner child. And my inner child always wanted to paint. And I started painting much later in life, but got away from it because I was being a mom and I was sick and I was doing all these other things were happening when I was married.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when my oldest baby was really little, we painted a lot together. And I know he misses it. So now that we have more time, like I have time with him, I thought it would be fun to introduce it to his little brother, because we have done it on a few occasions, but not that much. So, and it's something I always wanted to do as a little girl. So for the little girl in me, I got out the paints, I ordered more stuff. I decided this was going to be the time where I really got back into painting. And it's a good time to spend with my kids, us doing something creative together, like having a little bonding moment, because I work so much. So when I have some downtime, I want to, you know, other than just watching movies or, you know, I want to do something with them. So other than schoolwork and things that they don't find that fun,
right?
But they like to paint and I like to paint. So, and it's really healing also. So I sort of use it as art therapy during this time period too, right? Because we're all having this trauma. So it's a bit of therapy.
How is it therapeutic for you?
Well, first of all, I am a very abstract style artist. Sort of, my art icon is Jackson Pollock. So that is my style, is what I do. And I layer drips for the most part. So it's really messy. So I get to throw paint around
woohoo,
and make a mess. And then I get to watch it. It's something one of my guests on Hot Topics, Alexandra, said last night. He's an artist and he does his artwork layer by layer building. And it resonated with me because that is exactly what I do. I do a layer of mess and then it dries and then I do a layer of mess, and over these layers until I feel like it's somewhat finished, because, you know, it's never really finished. And then it's done. So
because it's not like you had something in mind at first. It's just like, what's going to happen?
For me, it's very intuitive, because it's how it makes me feel with these colors and those colors and how those blended and how that layered, and it's just it's how it makes me feel. And then I know, okay, I don't want to touch it anymore.
And how does, like, what does your inner child feel at the end of this process?
Sad, actually, because it's done. But during the whole a little sad, but during the whole process, she feels joy. So it's joyful. It's joyous to me, and to have my kids there and doing it too.
And that's something that you weren't allowed to do as a little kid.
We couldn't afford it. I mean, I painted ceramics when I went to private school. That's as far as I got with it. I did art class. I painted in art class, but as a little girl, I had such severe low self-esteem that I never thought anything I did was any good. So I couldn't really ever enjoy any of that stuff, because I always found fault with it. Classic perfectionism, I guess.
Because you're always trying to live up to somebody else's expectations.
Partially that. But I feel like when you have a parent so we all get our core wounds really early, usually by the time we're like 3, sometimes by up to 12. And we start developing our attachment styles, how we're going to be in our relationships with our friends and our lovers. And when you have a parent who is inconsistent with their affections, you develop certain core wounds, and that just was part of mine. So this is another thing I've been using this time for, is to study and learn about attachment styles and core wounds and mother wounds and father wounds and how to heal them. And I've been doing the healing work for myself, and I've been on my private Instagram at Creativity. I microblog about the things I'm learning as I learn it, to try to help other people who might be going through this or recognize something they felt about themselves in what I'm saying. If it resonates, then hopefully it'll help somebody.
And so I'm guessing that you would have more of an anxious attachment if you have inconsistent parenting where you're not really sure what you're going to get when you show up or when they show up?
I did.
Yeah.
So out of all the attachment styles, as you know, you can move through them. And so as I've been moving through on my journey, I've been moving towards this secure attachment style, which I think I would like to believe that I'm finally there after this last failed marriage. And, but in the past, I think I started out my dating life as an anxious attachment style for sure. And then as I grew and I healed a bit and I learned from relationships not working, I became more of a fearful, avoidant, sort of leaning anxious. And then that became more fearful, avoidant. And then that became more fearful, avoidant, sort of leaning dismissive. And then, and I just had to learn that that's no way to be. And it's no way to treat people either, expecting them to constantly validate you and your relationships and getting triggered by any little thing. And then this person has to soothe you because you don't know how to self-soothe. So I had to learn all those things. I had to learn how to reparent myself, tell myself the things I wish I heard, and go through all those processes and build up that self-love and build up that trust with myself to learn to be able to set boundaries, to fully show up for myself in relationships so that I wouldn't be a people pleaser and I wouldn't be, not unable to set boundaries and then feel resentful because I'm hyper vigilant about what I'm doing for my partner, but they're not giving that same level back to me. And now I'm quietly building resentment because I feel like we're not being equal. And I just want equal give and take, but I'm expecting so much more from them because I'm doing so much more, but that's not their attachment style. And that's not it doesn't correspond to their core wounds or their attachment. So then there's like a constant struggle, and then you either leave the relationship or they do, and then it's a fail. So hopefully we fail forward though. And we grow and we go into another relationship better and with some healing and understanding. You can show up for yourself and set boundaries. And when you can, I wrote this today, but I said, you often hear if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love anybody else? But if you don't trust yourself to show up for yourself, you're not going to trust anybody else either. And the relationship's not going to work either.
Well, that just goes back to that question that I asked you, before about that trust and sense of safety in yourself, right? Because
absolutely,
I don't think that, if I don't love myself, I can't love other people. I don't necessarily think that's true, because I think a lot of times it's easier to love other people than it is to love ourselves, because we hear those old messages and old tapes playing in our heads that caused us to question ourselves, that caused us to question our worthiness of love. And and then that's where you develop these attachment styles of the anxious and avoidant and dismissive. And it's like all of these things. And I said to you also before we started this, that I don't think that any marriages are failed, or any partnerships are failed, that they're just learning opportunities. It didn't work out in the way that you intended it to work out when you entered into the agreement. Maybe that's true. But it's not like it was wrong or bad or a mistake, or even a failure. It just didn't evolve in the way that you hoped it would evolve. So what can we learn from it? How is it propelling us to look at our own selves and to grow and to change, what we're going to do differently the next time? And this all relates to developing this sense of safety and trust and acceptance for who you are, however you
I
show
could
up.
see that. I could see that. I love that you said that it might be easier to love someone else because you have all these negative words in your head, and that affect your self-love and your self-worth and all of that. And I definitely see how that can be true. And I also feel that, you know, once you get to a point where you can really learn how to show up for yourself, like you said, then these kinds of loving relationships, they get easier because relationships get better for you, because as you learn, and you also learn to love yourself and about your attachment style and all of those things become more healed, you begin to choose different partners, because you begin to choose partners that see you the way you see you. And as your stock rises in your own eyes, then you choose partners who value you the way you value you.
And it's like a system, right? I mean, it is, every relationship is a system, and it's never which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know, it's this constant evolution of, I'm valuing myself, and therefore you're seeing the value in me, and because you see the value in me, that means I see the value in me even more. And you know, and not in a you know, pompous or arrogant way, but it's just like, we're all valuable and we're all worthy of love, and we all deserve to be loved and cared for and seen and heard and understood and accepted. You know, this is part of what I think this external stuff is teaching us, you know, about our own intrinsic value. It's not because of all the things that we do. It's just because we just are. We just are. We just are. We are love, you know, and the more that you're loving yourself, the more that you're loving the self, the more you can show up and just be love.
Yes, I love that. That's so beautiful. So beautiful.
So how do you, because I know you have a great love for veterans, you know, because this was part of your own journey. So can you share with us how your love evolved in that part of your life, and how you are trying to share love again in that community?
Absolutely. It's surprising because when I was on active duty, I just could not wait to get off of it. And so being the free-spirited girl that I am, I really struggled with the programming. I mean, the mental programming that's required to be enlisted, especially. And so when I got out, it was like the happiest day of my life. Like, when most people don't understand what it feels like to be property, but I do, because I was property of the United States government. So when that sort of weight was lifted off me, I thought that I was gonna take over the world. I thought, like Madonna, like, I'm gonna rule the world. And 3 years later, I was homeless. Well, about to be homeless. I was about 2 weeks away. I was jobless. And I was left penniless by my first husband of 5 years. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And my good friend was also a veteran. And She offered to become my roommate so that we could afford a place. But first I needed a job. And then I had another friend who was actually a civilian friend who was like, oh, this company I'm working for, I see a lot of veterans here. And I think she said, I think there are a lot of veterans here. You should come and apply. Seems like they might like veterans at this company, and they're hiring. So even though it was 45 minutes outside of the city, which was not ideal for me, I went, I got hired, and my life began to change from that moment. And so as I began to do better, I started to just out of sort of nowhere come across other veterans who needed help. And so my veteran friend was a little further along in me in her veteran experience. And so she started to teach me about stuff. Hey, this is how you go to the VA. This is how you do this. And so that information she gave me, I turned around and started giving to other veterans. And I would come across veterans who, you know, were in various stages, and I would just sort of help them out. This is how you make a resume. This is how you do this and that. And that turned into like a 20-year thing. And the reason why I did it was because it felt good. It felt healing for me, because I came out as a disabled veteran and I had a lot of struggles. So it felt like a healing process for me to help other veterans. And so I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And because it felt good and it felt like it was helping me heal, it was like therapy for my PTSD. And so then I tell other veterans, hey, listen, several veterans that came across that were suicidal, hey, listen, find a way to give back to the veteran community. It's worked for me to feel better. Maybe it can work for you. And really, I've seen it save lives. And so I just kept doing it. And I really didn't think about joining like the DAV, which I don't know why I didn't think about joining that. That would have been a great idea. Like I didn't join an organization. It is an organization that helps disabled American veterans.
Oh, okay.
And there's many organizations out there that I could have just went in to be a part of, but part of the time I was really sick too. So I didn't really know about these organizations, which is part of it. I didn't know how many organizations were out there that I could have just joined that were like not for profits. Especially for women, there are more now than there ever were. So that's also something that has to do with it too. There's a lot of less services there were for women. It's been slowly changing. And so essentially I decided when my current husband and I, or my current ex-husband, became that, I needed to go back to work and I needed to do something. And I met with a business mentor, and she became my friend. And we were talking one day, and I said, I think I want to start speaking about maybe fibromyalgia or veterans issues or something like that. And she was like, well, tell me about your fibromyalgia stuff. And I talked to her about it because, you know, I've learned how to manage it, and a lot of people are still suffering. And she said, well, that's actually something really that you could talk about. She's like, but tell me about your veteran stuff. So I started telling her, and she was like, oh my God, I've been talking to you all day. I've never seen you light up about anything the way you do about female veterans. She said, let's go do something for them. The homeless ones especially really is upsetting for me. And so we went to the Veterans Outreach Center, and we talked to the outreach coordinator, and we thought we might go pass out food for a day and talk to female veterans on the streets and, you know, try to just spread some love. And she said, you know what, it's really nice that you want to give them some food. She's like, but if you really want to do something for them, you should give them a voice. Wow. She said, because, yeah, and I was blown away.
That's
and
powerful.
She said that due to the prevailing perception that veterans are men, even now to this day in 2020, they don't get donations for women like they do for the men. So oftentimes when they go to do outreach work, they just give them a blanket because they don't have shoes or boots or coats or clothing for them. out in the streets when they're at their most vulnerable state. A lot of these women are have PTSD. A lot of them have experienced a military sexual trauma, and they're just not at a good stage in their life. And I believe that anyone who has served their country, who has volunteered to become property, because we all volunteer now, to become property of the United States government, should not come back home to having their basic needs met. I just don't believe that. And so that's what started all of this. It started with me wanting to learn how to speak, to craft a speech. And then I found the London Reel. I actually was watching the London Reel because back when I found impact theory, a few episodes in, I saw a thumbnail of a sharply dressed guy on a show, and I thought, oh my God, he's dressed so nice. Let me click on there and see what London Reel is. So I've been watching London Reel as part of my motivation lineup,
right,
if you will.
Right.
And I saw he had a course coming up, and I thought, I'm going to take that course, and it was Speak to Inspire. And then just as that course was going to end, I saw that he was doing a broadcasting course. And I thought, wow, it's really going to be hard for me to get a speaking career going. Maybe I should take this broadcasting course and spread the word about female veterans that way. I can maybe reach more people. And that's how it happened. Wow. And I do it because, like I said, I don't believe that these women should be marginalized. We served. We're out here. We're heroes too.
Yeah, nobody should be left behind.
Absolutely.
And when you were telling me the story of how, you know, when you were helping people, it brought you such peace and fulfillment, you know, so it basically, and I've heard this numerous times before, is that when you're feeling depressed or you're feeling upset about something, if you turn your attention to giving to somebody else, that somehow it fills you up.
I feel like that.
And so have you seen the effects, you know, when you encourage other women to do the same thing, you see their lives transform as well?
Definitely. And I think that so veterans, females have, actually all veterans kind of have a familial bond in a way, because by virtue of we've had this experience that not everybody has. But veteran women especially, there is a deep sisterhood bond. And so when we get to connect in groups, it's amazing. And so even, for example, I actually got to do some speaking on Wednesday night on a Zoom meeting for Woven. And it's an organization that provides like different courses for female veterans. And I was asked to come and speak by my dear friend and one of my first guests for the Female Veterans podcast. Her name is Lynn Geyser, and she has an organization called Hope for Veterans. And she invited me to speak to these women, and it was amazing. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. They'd been meeting for 8 weeks. I was their final speaker. And I came in there, and by the end of the call, it was like just family. And that is always how it is.
Wow.
I've never come into a situation where it wasn't. So when I started the podcast, it was very well embraced by the community because I tell the real stories, both good and bad, the truth.
And you give women a voice. That's a huge thing. You know,
it was important to me
because you're in a situation where it is so male dominated, right? And male populated.
Yes.
And I assume, I mean, I've never been in the military. My dad was in the military, so he spent a long time in there, but you know, that you're treated, I don't know, did you feel like you were treated equally, or you felt like you had to be one of the guys, or
Absolutely.
yeah.
You assimilate. Okay, so historically, it is male dominated, like you said, and male populated. So it is a unique experience for every single woman who goes in because it's a boys' club. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
So you adapt or you become that girl. And what that girl is, as one of on my very last episode, my friend Allison stated, was that it's the girl who makes a fuss. It's the girl who can't take a joke. It's the girl who doesn't want you to walk up to her and, tune in Tokyo in front of her.
Inappropriately touch her.
Well, even just not touch her, but like right in front of her, even like anything like that. The girl who gets mad if you slap her on the butt or jokingly, that was air quotes. You could see them. No,
Yeah.
But really it's, so for me, I was lucky. I had great guy friends. I was on a base. Well, I remember there was a rapist on the base for a little bit when I first became staff on that base. And I can't remember how long it was until he was caught, but I definitely remember being scared. And we were all scared, the girls in the female barracks, until he was caught. But other than that, so I knew rapes happened, but I didn't know anyone that confided in me that it had happened to them on the base. I saw all sorts of other stuff, but I knew it happened. And so you're in this environment and you sort of assimilate. So yeah, I heard lots of dirty jokes. I had a Master Chief, and I'll tell you, I loved that Master Chief. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I loved that Master Chief. He was like a grandfather, but he'd come into the workspace every day at like the same time. I think it was like 3 p.m. if memory serves me correctly, and he'd tell a dirty joke. And I was 19, and I was never offended. But if you don't think of it in that way, if you reframe that, it's really inappropriate for this grown man to come into the workspace and tell a dirty joke to a room full of young women, including myself and maybe a couple of guys. But in my department, we had more women, and tell us this dirty joke. It was inappropriate. But though I didn't find offense with it, but there were lots of other things that I did find offensive. And there were times where I felt sexually harassed, and there were times where I felt, but that being said, it was sort of water off a duck's back on most occasions. And there were times where I knew that if I said anything, that nothing would happen, because I had that experience with my roommate who was sexually harassed horrifically. And we tried to go up the chain of command, and we tried to do something about it, and nothing was done. So I knew, in fact, we were told if we kept pushing it, we'd get into trouble.
Wow.
So I knew what.
And this was long before the Me Too movement.
Well before. And if you ask me, the Me Too military movement is not big enough, because if you listen to my podcast, you'll see how many stories are about military sexual trauma or stalking or harassment.
Wow.
And how the impact of these on a 19, 18, sometimes 20-year-old girl, sometimes a little older, but those girls, this trauma that happens to them when they're that young, it takes them a lot of times till they're in their 40s, mid 40s to recover, to get some sort of life of normalcy, to face that, to start to heal. I mean, that's a robbery to me. That's 20 years stolen of a life that could have been happier, all because this girl wanted to have a military career. And a lot of the times, their careers cut short because they're kicked out, they're processed out.
Wow. So they're not only the victim, but they're victimized even more.
And sometimes more than once.
Wow.
During the process of it. I mean, sometimes it's all I can do to hear these stories. And I mean, thankfully, there's a lot of good ones, though, so I don't want to misrepresent. But there are a lot. I mean, I think the statistic is 1 in 3 women experienced military sexual trauma in the
Wow.
military. So it's very real. And I know that big military, Department of Defense, is trying to make changes and trying to do all these things, but it takes a long time for that to trickle down. And when you have a culture that's male dominated, a boys club, it takes a long time for those mindsets to change, right? And it's perpetuated.
Right.
So,
but that's why it's even more important to have people like you, Kia, who speak your voice, you know, who use your voice to speak truth and to bring to light the things that need to change. So that you know, you stepping into your sense of trust and love and power with who you are, because you have done so much healing work on yourself, to recognize the things that were blocking you, right? To recognize your triggers, to recognize the things that caused you to go backwards instead of move forwards. You know, this is where you showing up, you having done your own work, so that you show up and be an example for others, to give them permission to do the same. You know, so this beautiful life that you're creating, this beautiful life that you're creating now, is an example for all of these people to see and say, you know what, she experienced similar things, and look at her now. Wow.
Thank you.
You're inspiring.
Thank you so much. That's incredibly nice.
You're really, really inspiring.
I think I'm going to get emotional. I didn't think it was going to be that kind of interview. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I want to be of service. That's something that you get when you serve your country. It becomes ingrained that you just want to continue to serve. And that's part of the reason why when I tell people, go into your veteran community and help some veterans, because that's part of it. It's fulfilling that sort of ache that you're missing to serve.
Well, and that's, I mean, it's not just about veterans, because I knew that when when we talked outside of our class, is that you do have this beautiful heart. You're very giving and you're very generous, and you have, you're very kind. You're a very kind person, and you're very helpful. And so that's how you show up. And that's what I felt. That's what I feel. And that's why I wanted to have you here with me, so that you could share that with all of the listeners. So
thank you very much.
Thank you
for saying that.
Yeah. So thank you for being who you are. You know, it's not just what you do, but it is being that love, you know, developing that sense of safety and trust in yourself. And so that you can show up, you know, to create more love in the world. It's just, you're just sharing who you are. So that's a real gift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am fully emotional now. So thank you so much for saying that. It was really beautiful. I don't think I'll ever forget it.
So let me ask you, because this sort of relates to your kids, but how do you define real love? What do you want them to learn from you about real love?
That they are love. And they should spread it out. That's pretty much it. If they do that, they'll be all right.
And so they just show up and just be.
Be present in the present moment. And realize that if something doesn't feel good, if whatever you're doing or whoever you're with, if it doesn't feel good, then that's your internal compass telling you to go in another direction. And don't dim your light to fit in, and to share love, be love, spread it around.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I want to be conscientious of your time. So how can people get in touch with you, find out about your podcast, find out about the other work that you're doing?
Well, you can always go to thefemaleveteranspodcast.com. That's the jumping off point, I guess. I would really love for everybody to check out the veteranschannel.com, which is my new platform that I'm a part of. It's for both men and women veterans now. I'm the new kid with my Female Veterans podcast, and hopefully we'll be developing, actually I should say this now, I've created another show that's sort of a spin-off of the Female Veterans podcast. It's called Women Warrior Stories, and it's going to be interviews with female veterans on video, so you'll be able to see the veterans, and it will be for the Veterans Channel during this COVID time. It should be launching in the next few weeks, so I'm excited about that. You can always see me on Hot Topics Live on my Facebook page, Hot Topics Live, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. and the occasional Wednesday episode in the afternoon, because we just have fun doing it. So we just keep doing it. And it's all about, businesses and podcasts with cool topics like yours. So I'm sure everyone will see you on there soon and next month to be exact. And we just talk about cool topics and try to add value and positivity into the world. And I'm on Instagram and at Creativity for my personal healing journey, and Hot Topics, the podcast, which is Hot Topics Live in podcast form for whenever you have time, if you can't catch it. And that's on Instagram too. And the Female Veterans Podcast is on Instagram. So you can find me pretty much everywhere on all the platforms for podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. And I'm on Twitter at FemVet Podcast. I'm not on there a lot, but I am on Twitter too. So That's it.
And is that all? Yeah. Is that all? No, just kidding.
I did. I was saying it. It felt like a lot. I was like, maybe I should condense this, but it's where I'm at. I don't know.
You're going to have to send me all of those so I can put them in the show notes, please.
I'll send you an email.
It'll be like this long. What's he involved in?
It's getting crazy. Oh, and if you want to be coached by me, I am developing a coaching program right now, or you could just join the London Real Academy and I'll coach you there.
The woman who never sleeps. Yeah, you're amazing, Kia. I really honor you for everything that you've done and everything that you're doing and everything that you're creating and just how you're showing up in the world. You're a really beautiful, beautiful woman. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Likewise. What do they say? It takes one to know one.
Aw, thank you. Thanks. So, listeners, I'm sure you will be inspired. We've talked about a lot of great things today. So please subscribe to the Wake Up to Real Love podcast and share with all your friends. Give us feedback, write us and give suggestions for future podcasts. And then if you would like to work with me on overcoming heartbreak in your relationship and creating more real love in your life, you can find me at The Awakening with Dawn on Facebook and Instagram, and my website. We're making some changes, so that should be coming out pretty soon. And, this is what I say at the end of every podcast, Kia, which is obviously that you have done this, that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. So that when you create your sense of love and trust and safety in yourself, then you can just show up, in such a beautiful way to help spread your love throughout the world. So thank you for how you show up. Thank you so much for being here, Kia.
Thank you for having me. It's been an amazing experience.
All right. So thank you, listeners, for listening. And every day, wake up to more real love. See you next time. Take care. Bye.